The CW vortex, although rarely brought up, was truly the end of an era. The end of Saturday morning cartoons, which had been a staple of TV since the late 70s. The end of anime dubs solely targeted towards children, with most anime dubs now targeting themselves towards teens. The block started August 2012 and ended in September of 2014. So yeah, there's a pretty strange story as to how vortexx even came about, which is that 4Kids was doing some shady stuff behind TV Tokyo's back, which ended up in them getting sued. After this, 4Kids was pretty much bankrupt, and well, they ended up selling all their stuff to companies like Konami and Saban. Saban taking their toonzai time slot, along with a few of their licenses. With really only 2 years under its belt and no original programming, the block never really took off. Most of the vortexx programming consisted of older 4Kids and even Foxbox era shows, with 2 educational shows always thrown in. Yeah, they always stuck out like a sore thumb, but hey, it beats not having the block at all. Oh yeah, they had WWE for whatever reason. And Power Rangers, which I tried to get into, but honestly couldn't. Little story time here, I remember not having any TV for about 2 months, and I remember by the time I got it back, 4Kids TV/toonzai had been over for a while. And because I didn't have Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon, I was just mindlessly flipping through basic cable when I saw Justice League Unlimited airing, followed by bumpers for Iron Man Armored Adventures, Spectacular Spider-Man, Sonic X, and Dragon Ball Z. And just like that, I found Glorious Purpose. Although I didn't like every single show, shows like Justice League Unlimited and Spectacular Spider-Man kept me coming back. And later, I really started to enjoy shows like Digimon Fusion, a show I would never have gotten into if it wasn't forced down my throat. Nah, but it's still the only Digimon show I've ever seen and it was fucking awesome. Although vortexx's constantly changing lineup was cool and all, does anybody remember their Halloween special? Cause I don't. Even though I remember seeing the bumpers for it all the time. It was weird because I didn't know who the hell the Tiny Toons were at the time, and it was weirder because the show wasn't airing on the network anyway. So now that I'm done gushing, why did this block end in the first place? Well, it's pretty complicated actually. There isn't one sole reason as to why vortexx ended. But it did end for a very similar reason as to why you don't see any more Saturday morning cartoon block. Back in the 80s and 90s, Saturday morning cartoons were a very lucrative business. There weren't very many regulations when it came to advertising towards children and so your cartoons could basically just be toy commercials. And that doesn't mean there weren't any actual commercials, because there were. This is the era where cartoons like He-Man, Masters of the Universe, and Thundercats came out of. Even things like the 80s Ninja Turtle series. Then we had an era in the late 90s where anime dubs became very lucrative in the West, pioneered by companies like 4Kids. In the late 90s and early 2000s, parents started to notice how almost predatory the advertising was towards their children when it came to everything from sugary cereals to toys to fast food places, and how almost mind-numbingly violent some of the cartoons were. And so they called for stricter regulations, and thus the FCC started to regulate Saturday morning blocks a lot more than they ever did before. Things like 2 hours of educational programming and making it a lot harder to market shows around toys for these blocks, coupled with competition from networks like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, made these blocks a lot less profitable. And so by the time the vortexx came about, there really just wasn't that much money to be made.